What's up? My name is Christian Igwe and I serve as the lead pastor here at Redeemed Christian Church. I want to let you know today that you are welcome, known, and loved. Our whole vision here is to create a place where people feel exactly like that. Welcome, known, and loved. And that you get to go to the next step of being grown in Christ. Today, we're going to continue on with the series that we started last week talking about change. And really fitting because this is the beginning of the year. Everybody has New Year's resolutions, things that they want to do in their life and see change happen in their life some way, somehow. Today we're going to continue on talking about when we hurt, we change. So I have a question for you. Have you ever been hurt so bad that you were changed by that hurt? Well, I want to hear your story of what went through your life, your story of change and hurt that led to change. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and leave it in the comments below, or you can hit us up on DM, and we'd love to just hear your story and see what God has done in your life. But what is hurt? Definition of hurt comes up to be detrimental to hinder or impair. And last week I talked about some of the mistakes that I personally had made during my teenage years and the consequences that came out of those mistakes. In those days, for me, the big phrase was, and I might be dating myself with this, but the big phrase during my teen years was the whole YOLO thing. And it was, you only live once. And so that was the whole mentality, the thought process, the ideas that I had in my head is that you only live once. So do whatever you want, whatever makes you feel comfortable, whatever makes you happy, and forget all the consequences with it. And while this was fun in the moment, the truth of that lifestyle is far from fun. I started to reap the benefits of doing whatever I wanted to. And these benefits weren't exactly the greatest. And they had consequences with them that I could not comprehend at that time in my life. And I'm sure many today can relate to me in the fact that you've done some dumb things in your life. And the consequences of those decisions have hurt you, or they hurt others around you, and placed you in a spot where you decide that you need to assess your life and decide if change is necessary or if it's even possible for you. We talked about that exact thought process last week and the possibility of change and what it looks like when we choose not to change. We saw the story of Saul and how he was just so trapped by his bitterness and his envy and his hatred towards David that he couldn't change. He was stuck being who he was. He had chosen the phrase, this is who I am, this is who I will always be. And he got stuck there. And then we also saw David's story. And we saw how David was not a perfect guy. He did some really hurtful, dumb things. But through that process, we saw that David, he changed because he sought God with everything that he was. Even through his mistakes, he didn't run away from God, he ran towards God. And so today I want to shift and talk about Peter and Peter's story of self-inflicted hurt and how it led him to change and strengthen him for life after Christ died. In Mark 14, 26 through 31, we see the beginnings of this hurt start to play out with Jesus telling them exactly what would happen when he died. And he says this, he says, after they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, you will all fall away and be ashamed and be afraid to be associated with me as disciples. Because it's written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. But after I've been raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. But Peter said to him, in all his confidence, even if they all fall away and desert you, ashamed and afraid of being associated with you, I will not do so. And Jesus said to him, I assure you and most solemnly say to you, this very night, before a rooster crows twice, you will deny that you even know me 3 times. But Peter kept saying insistently, If I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And they were all saying the same thing as well. Right here, we see that Jesus was already aware of the betrayal that was coming to him. He was aware of the hurt that was going to happen to him from his own disciples, from the people that he saw as being closest to him. I don't know if you've ever felt like that before, but I have. It's like when the people who are supposed to be your closest buddies, your ride or dies, and all of a sudden, they're ghosts. And the hurt that comes with that is intense. And that's what Peter did to Jesus. He talked about over and over, I'll never deny you, Jesus. He said, even if they all fall away and desert you, ashamed and afraid of being associated with you, I will not do that. And yet we know the story of what happens. It happens exactly as Jesus said it would. Peter denied him 3 times at his trial. And after he denied Jesus the 3rd time, he broke down and wept. And we see that in Mark 14:72, where the rooster crows the 2nd time and Peter remembered what Jesus said to him. For a rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. Thinking of this, he began weeping in anguish. This is exactly how many of us feel when we're faced down with our own failures and how the decisions that we've made have hurt other people. And Peter saw this right here. He saw how his decision to deny Christ not only was foretold to him, but that it actually happened. Peter not only hurt Jesus with his betrayal, but he hurt his own overall growth potential. And then we see that he regressed back into who he was before he met Jesus. Peter went back to being a fisherman. He took all the other disciples with him. You see, Peter had spent all this time with Jesus, growing, developing, getting stronger in the word, and yet because of this hurt, he regressed back to who he was before he ever met Jesus. The good news about all of this is that Peter had a restoration point, and he was restored by Jesus, who is merciful. And we see that in John 21:15 through 25. And you can read that yourself. But through this, Jesus asked Peter 3 times if he loved him, replicating where Peter had denied Jesus and restoring him from that place. This time, instead of denying him, Peter said he loved him 3 times, back and forth. And then he revealed to Peter that he would end up walking the same path of martyrdom that Jesus did. So, I want to end this today with this. There's a big takeaway that we can get from today's message, from what we've read today, is that all of these Bible characters learn is that with God, all things are possible. Matthew 19:26 tells us that. It says, Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And he didn't say, some things are possible. Maybe if you do X, Y, and Z, then it will be possible. He said, no, with God, all things are possible. And so knowing that, you can change. You can find strength, you can find comfort and guidance in the Lord through whatever challenging times you're going through. So sometimes when you hurt, whether it's hurting yourself, whether it's hurting others, it leads you to a place of where you have to change. And if you choose to change, following the Spirit's lead, I promise you that it will lead you into a life of being blessed with Christ. I pray that this message encourages you, it uplifts you, and brings you to a place of peace today. Be blessed.